I can remember my earliest memories of when I wanted to be involved in this whole monster world. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, but I remember sitting in the living room, my family's house, in the living room, and there was some monster movie on TV, some, you know, really cheesy, but I loved them all. It didn't matter how bad they were. And I just remember watching these things, and I was already a big fan of monster movies because I had all the monster magazines and all that kind of stuff, but there was something that just struck me thinking that I wanted to be able to do that somehow, and I didn't even know what that was. I think at the time it was just wanting to, you know, as a kid you like things, so you want to emulate them and copy them and be part of that, and that was, I think, was the earliest point where I realized that there was something to it for me. You know, there were so many monsters that I was into, right? All kinds. Makeup monsters, big mechanical monsters. But for some reason, and I know what the reason was, but I was totally captured by Ray Harryhausen's work. And I can remember the first, I used to read about Ray Harryhausen in Famous Monsters of Film, and that's all I had when I was growing up. And I can remember the first time 20 Million Miles to Earth came on TV, and that was the first time I saw one of his movies, knowing who he was and knowing more about the process, and suddenly, like, that whole movie was a completely different way of looking at things, because I was sort of dissecting the work while I was watching it. So it's working on two levels, just a cool monster movie and understanding that this guy did this all a frame at a time. And it was just such a big moment, you know, to be able to see it through a different set of eyes. I think the first things that I did myself, I had a friend in high school that was, junior high school, that was into the same thing, and we used to make masks, monster masks, but we didn't know what we were using in terms of materials, so we'd go to the art class and we'd walk away with a bunch of rolls of plaster bandage, and we'd do these really quick, lousy sculptures, and we had these plaster masks that we would make, and then we'd get out our Super 8 cameras and make movies. And I remember I was actually doing a Planet of the Apes appliance out of plaster bandage and just gluing crepe hair all around it, and it was really a mask more than appliance, right? But I mean, when you're a kid, it just doesn't matter. You've got this feeling of I got to do this somehow, and if you don't have the right materials or the right approach, it doesn't matter, because you have to spit this stuff out somehow. The plaster bandage Planet of the Apes appliance I thought was novel. I thought it was going to go somewhere. Much to my chagrin, it didn't. So I realized pretty early on that you know, I was really going to have to get down and get the real materials, and you know, always starting with the easiest thing, going to the library, looking up books on makeup, and there's nothing in those books, because I'm talking about back in the late 60s. Looking at books that were probably written in the 40s, and you know, it talks about grease paint. So I started with that, and I went to the phone book in the yellow pages and looked up makeup. Oh, there's nothing in my little town. And I go, theatrical makeup. Oh, there's one place that sells grease paint. So I thought, that's where I'm going to go. And I had my mom drive me there, and of course on the way there I have this image in my mind, which is not too different from what it is today. If you go into Friend's Beauty Supply and you walk in, and there's appliances right on the shelf, and in my mind I thought, I'm going to walk into a store and it's going to be aisle after aisle of makeup appliances, and I would just go look through find a Planet of the Apes makeup appliance, and of course I get there and it's just a drugstore, and they have one little cabinet in the back with a bunch of old sticks of Stein's grease paint, and it's like, well, now what do I do? You know, where do you start? It was so difficult, but it wasn't difficult to the point where I thought, well, I'm not going to do it, right? You just thought, okay, I hit a dead end here, now I've got to get around it and find some other way. I was doing stuff like Famous Monsters of Filmland would say, John Chambers made an appliance, an ape face out of foam rubber. I'm thinking, I know what foam rubber is, and he cast it in a mold. I know what a mold is, so I'd made a mold of an ape face, and I took a chunk of foam rubber, and I thought, how do I get this in the mold? And I'm serious, and this is embarrassing, and I put this I put it on the stove, and I thought, well, I gotta cook this foam rubber down so I can get it back in the mold. And it started smoking, and it was a horrendous mess. So I thought, I'm going back to plaster bandage, man. It took me the longest time. The next big milestone was Alcone Company, Paramount Theatrical Supplies out of New York. originally, then Alcone Company, and getting a little bottle of latex. Oh my God, that was amazing, because now I could brush latex into molds, and then it was shortly after that that I found in that same catalog a foam latex kit. And it was really expensive. For me at the time, it was like a 1-quart kit, and it was, I don't know, it was probably $20 or $30, but it could have been $100. And you work the whole summer just to save up enough money, and you get this stuff, and you treat it like gold because it costs as much, you know, and very little instruction, and you just kind of, it's all hit and miss, right? Trial and error, but you have such minimal material to work with. So what can you do? You just got to keep going and going and going. So it was a really long process of getting to where you could really get your hands on the right materials, at least when I was coming up doing it. My parents were great. They were really supportive, and like I've told people, I was lucky because I had parents that were, they weren't driving me. It's like they didn't understand what I wanted to do. You know, I mean, my dad was the one who finally said, you know, look, somebody's out there making those movies, so why couldn't it be you? Why couldn't it be you? But they weren't pushing me to saying, oh, you know, I grew up in Pennsylvania. We live in Pennsylvania. That's a 3,000-mile trip. Don't bother. You know, it's too much work. And they were very supportive, but not in a driving way. They just figured I was going to find my way. And I remember going to my dad once and saying, I need a life cast made. And I explained to him the process, and I got this material from Alcone Company in New York, and I thought what I had was impression cream, but what it basically had was molding materials, basically plaster Paris, right? And explained the whole thing. My dad told him how to do it, and I'm laying on the kitchen floor, and he's putting this stuff on my face, and it's getting hot, and it's getting hard. And now being a parent, I'm thinking back, if one of my kids had talked me into covering their face with rock, and then not even knowing whether you could get it off, I would have been crazy. And I just remember my dad was so patient, we're trying to get it off, and it's sticking to everything, and it was the most painful process, but I ended up getting what I thought was, oh, I'll get a life cast. What I ended up with was basically a plaster mold of my face, which was useless because you can't get something hard out of something hard. So again, it was just another experiment in Tom's crazy life with my dad and him trying to help me figure all this stuff out. In my life, moving out here from Pennsylvania is probably third in the coolest things I've ever done in my life. Because you know, getting married is great, having kids was great, but then moving out here was it's like everything I've ever wanted ever since I was a kid, to be able to move out to Hollywood, you know, and to drive around, and there's Universal Studios, and there's Paramount, and there's 20th Century Fox, and I knew a handful of people, right? I knew Stan. I knew who he was. I mean, I didn't know him. I knew who Stan was. I knew who John Chambers was, and Tom Berman, and you finally get to meet these people that most of your life you've been aware of, and they've sort of been the end of the quest. You think, all I need to do is get to these guys and show them my book, and something's going to happen. And it actually almost did with Stan, because John Chambers, who I knew and had written to, at least blazed a little bit of a trail, and he would call up and he'd say, oh, I just talked to Tom Berman, go see him. I just talked to Stan Winston, go see him. And I went to see Stan, and I had my little book, and I remember sitting down in Stan's office, and he went through and he looked at the pictures pretty quickly, right? And he saw a picture of a gorilla suit I did, and he said, you have a gorilla suit? He said, do you have that out here? I said, I do. And he said, I'm going to give you the name of somebody who's been looking for a gorilla suit, just like that, right? And the only difference was the gorilla suit wasn't that good. but what I'm saying is it could have been. But to get out here and to actually be in this environment was like magic coming true for me, and it has lasted. I mean, even to this day, I've been out here 30 years, and I don't look at everything with the same exact sense of wonder, nor do I look at it with any kind of a feeling of jaded attitude. At most, on my worst day, I will look at it and go, God, I wish this was 1982 again, and I was starting all over, because just the height and everything was just so electric, you know, to be out here. So my first job was needing to find work out here just to sustain myself. And then on my days off, I was working at a camera store, right? So on my day off, I would make the rounds of all the shops. And I finally landed a job with Makeup Effects Company, where a lot of these, you know, a lot of us started there on a movie called Metal Storm. Man, first movie is always great, no matter how lousy the movie is. But it doesn't matter because you're still gonna pour 100% into it, right? And from the time I started on that movie till the time that movie ended, it was just an amazing process of being introduced to everything. The right way to make molds, the right ways to sculpt, the right ways to run foam rubber. I was doing everything on that show. I got to sculpt, make molds, run rubber, paint appliances, go on set and apply them, go on set and puppeteer things. I mean, in the scope of one short movie, the whole world was just exposed to me that way. And wow, did that ever make an impression? To realize all those little functions, and this was back in a day when the crews were much smaller and everybody was doing a piece of everything, and I think that's what was making it so exciting at the time. Okay, so all right, so here's the cool part of the story, right? I worked for Makeup Effects Lab. I had a great time working for Tom Berman on a couple of shows, just because of the history and things that Tom had done in his career. And then to go from there to working with Stan Winston. Now at this point, I'm just now starting to get kind of the feel of you work and you work and you work for 3, 4, 5 months, and then you're out of work. And you start all over and you're back on the sidewalk. So now I've had that happen a few times, so I've kind of got that rhythm down and I know what to expect. And I walk into the Stan Winston's shop, and here's actually the reason I'm there is because John Rosengrant and Shane Mahan, whom I had met earlier on Metal Storm, they're now working at Stan Winston's, and they're working on a pilot that Stan was doing called Wishman. And they had talked to Stan about me coming in for an interview because Stan was going to be starting this movie called Terminator, of course, and nobody knew what it was, right? Who knew? And I just remember walking into a shop and just seeing familiar faces and thinking, this is where I want to be, because Stan's like the top guy even then, you know. And I remember again doing the interview. I had met him earlier when I'd shown him my book when I first moved out. Luckily he didn't remember it. Oh, I'm so lucky he didn't remember it, because now I'm just there because these 2 other guys that work for him say, oh yeah, this guy can do the work. So I got hired, right? And we came in and we just finished up some stuff on Wishman. And you know how they say that being in the right place at the right time really makes a difference. It really. I have no doubt that played in a big way, because when you start working for a guy like Stan Winston and the movie is Terminator and what that became on the horizon, I mean, that was huge. I could not have asked for a better chance, a better opportunity. I worked hard, you know, I didn't want to screw it up. I didn't know how big Terminator was going to be. I didn't know how big Stan Winston was going to be, but I've always approached every job as a very important thing that look, it took me an awful lot to cross country and throw away everything in the past and start all over. So of course I'm going to try to make everything the best it can be. But there was just something totally different in Stan's shop. And I think what it was there was just sort of an energy to it. You know, there's an excitement for me, but there's an energy to just being in that shop, because you're looking around and I'm recognizing things that I've seen from Heartbeeps. And at the time there was some television work that I mean, it seems like a goofy show when you look back now on Manimal, but back then, you know, I was watching the show and thinking this stuff was so cool, and to just be around the actual world where this stuff had been created and having it all be so new was really really energizing. You know, there's sort of a feeling that, and it would keep coming back. We'd start a new show. We started Terminator, and it was really exciting, and then we were doing Aliens, and it's almost like I get to see myself kind of leapfrog over other people that had been doing better work longer than I have. But for some reason, it's just like I just wanted to be the guy that was doing great work, and I think Stan saw that, you know, and he really gave me a chance. But every project, Pumpkinhead was the same, you know, again, something new. It was always something new. Stan was moving into directing, so he moved us up and let us design and create stuff. Monster Squad, Stan was designing stuff, and he handed out the monsters, and we all got to do this stuff. So it just kept getting bigger and bigger and better, and if anything, the only downside was it's like you're hooked, right? It's like a drug, and you just keep wanting to have more and more and more, and you get to a point where you suddenly realize, okay, now I'm at the level where I'm not going to have those huge jumps. There's still the ups and downs of it, but it never was the same as when I first started working at Stan's. You know what? Look, I'm going to give you a little piece of honesty. It'd be great to sit here and tell you exactly what you need, how to be successful, and I can't. I can't warrant that because things are different. I knew what I knew what I had to bring to the game 30 years ago, and obviously it worked. For you know, or in spite of it, in spite of what I brought, I still was successful. But what I think is still necessary, whether it's this job, whether it's now, whether it was 30 years ago, whether it's 10 years from now, I think the most important thing that you have to bring to a job is enthusiasm, right? A sort of an unquestioned enthusiasm. You're not going to evaluate where you're working or the project you're working on or the people you're working with and temper that enthusiasm. You shouldn't look at something and go, well, I'm only doing it with these guys. I really want to be here. I really want to be working on that movie. It's never going to work. You've got to have 100% of your enthusiasm and 100% of your focus, and you've got to be willing to give it each time. I mean, I've talked to people who feel like their lives are like this vessel that's full of energy, right? And it's finite amount of energy, and it's like, now, how much am I going to pour on this project? And I'm going to save the best for myself. And I'm thinking, man, that is so counterintuitive to me because we're doing a very creative thing. And creativity by its nature, I think you have to expend that creativity and then it fills up again. And what it fills up with is better creativity because you've sort of exhausted everything that you are up to that point. And now you're replenishing it with material that's based on bigger life experiences. So I think the more you do, the more you can do, the more you can become. And I think that's why, especially these days, when you see artists whose later work later in their lives, it just far outshines stuff that they started with. And the stuff that they started with is phenomenal. So I do believe that it's the enthusiasm and with that, the dedication to fulfill that, to follow through on that enthusiasm and deliver that to a piece of art, to a project. You know what's interesting too? I think the difference between being on the outside and wanting to be involved in this and actually being involved, and to this day, I still vacillate back and forth. Because from the outside, you think everything's beautiful and pristine and perfect, and every sculpture is true, and every skin is manufactured with loving care, and everything, you know, nary an air bubble. Everything's perfect, right? And the truth is, you get into it, and it's like, let me see that skin you're holding up to the light, and it's just peppered with air bubbles and a horrible edge, and it's like, and there's a guy at the door that needs to pick it up and take it to the set, and you go, great, I cut this and I'll glue this. You throw it out there, and it works because it's about these are all of these things that we manufacture are still, they're not the final product, and that's you have to keep in mind. The final product is what you do with them. And very early on Aliens, working for Stan again, I remember being on the set and we're shooting the first scene where you see an alien warrior. And I showed up on set, and we had been painting these things, building and painting aliens now for a couple of months over in London. We were working in this sort of palette of browns and these bony white colors and then the dark blacks. And so I figured this was all down and pretty well set. And we show up on set, and the scene is the alien warrior who's kind of secreted himself in the wall with all this textured, you know, alien extrusions and all this stuff. And the one female Marine is turning around, and the creature leaps out of the wall and grabs her. So we show up on set, and the set is black, and our alien is brown and white. And already I kind of knew something was up. And it was just, it was me and John Rosengrant on set. Stan was off. I think by that time he was already doing second unit work. I don't know how he did it all. But we're on the set, and you know it's not going to work, but you go, okay, we'll get up on this box and grab hold, and we start pushing him in. And I just remember, I don't know if I remember hearing the sound of Jim Cameron or just knowing that he was there, just the presence, and knowing that we're not going to get away with this, but you just keep trying. And all of a sudden it was, no, what are you guys doing? And the alien guy steps out. He goes, how is this ever going to blend in with that? And I'm thinking, but we did this months ago, and these guys just painted your set wrong. You know, I'm thinking it's that easy. And thank God I didn't say anything, because wow, what a stupid thing to say. So you think, all right, how do you turn this situation around? And I remember one of my responses was I was going to throw up, right? Because I thought my career is over. And then we just ended up, we had some spray cans of black spray paint. And after you spend hours and days painting an alien suit and you put the guy back on the wall and then you just grab a spray can and start dusting him down with black spray paint, you suddenly realize that there's more to getting this stuff built properly than doing clean, precise, really super detailed work, because it's more about how it exists on film than how it exists when it's in your hands and you're carrying it to the set.